Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast, and look at this guy. He's back. Isaac Trotter, back in the 24/7 sports family. And I told him, I texted him, we got to do a pod. We haven't done a pod in so long. We did have the under last year of how many times you'd come on the pod. But that's because you had your own gig. We were doing our own thing. So finally, he's back. What's up, man?
What's up? It's good to be back. It's good to be teammates again. You know what I mean? And I think that it's just so fun to be part of this again, and just to be, back working with you and kind of a different way, but still the same old, you know what I mean? And it's been a first couple of weeks has been a little bit wild, but something I was really looking forward to, and it's been even better than I expected, which is awesome.
So tell the people what you do.
Okay, so I'm basically part of the national news desk for 24/7 Sports, and we kind of work with everybody. Jeremy is, I'll give you guys the inside scoop on this. Like, Jeremy is highly regarded amongst these people at 24/7 Sports about how we go. Our job is to basically give you the free stuff so that Jeremy and the guys like him who work on the team sites can dominate and do their thing and give you guys inside scoop. But we don't have to do a lot of work for Illinois because Illinois has such a great team, and Joey does a great job, and Derek does a great job, Ryan, obviously, and Jeremy's a big part of that. And so it's my job is to basically work on there doing a lot of the breaking news. We do a lot of the stuff that maybe some of our publishers like Jeremy don't want to do or can't do because they're just covered up with a lot of stuff. And it's high intensity a little bit. Like, it gets after it, the Slack channel gets popping and you get 90 notifications in a hurry. It's high paced, and that's the way I like it. And it kind of gets me back into my comfort zone and the swing of things that I really like doing. And it's been really fun early just to kind of bring my own ideas and some of these deep cut type of things that I like to do with analysis and stuff, and then also do what they need me to do. And that's been really fun.
Someone called you out, though, the other day, an Illinois fan, that you wrote something positive about Juwan Howard, who's done a lot of positive things at Michigan.
How dare I? How dare I? You know what? One of the things is funny, too, is that, when you get to know some of these coaches, they're great dudes. Like, Juwan Howard is a great guy. And you could hate him as an Illinois fan, or maybe you just don't like his techniques, or, I know he had that dust up with Mark Turgeon in the Big Ten tournament. People didn't like that. But just the type of person that he's a great dude. So it is funny. You kind of have to write some things that maybe Illinois fans don't necessarily love. Maybe you don't want to read about Indiana football being really good and having their rebuild be way ahead of Illinois. Maybe you don't want to read about Juwan Howard and this recruiting class that he's gotten. But I think, I think that if you're doing my job, you just have to tell it how it is. That's just the way it is, even though maybe some of the followers on Twitter might not be happy. And we're not talking about anyone in specific, Trevor Valise.
And you kind of I don't think people understand that when you're in this job, at some point you can check that stuff at the door. I have enormous respect for Pat Fitzgerald. If my kid were a good football player, I would love for him to play for Pat Fitzgerald. And now Bielema has some similarities. I think those two guys are very similar, but I can't blame a kid for wanting to go to Northwestern to play football right now. What Fitz, if you were here, would be, statues already, everything, and he's the greatest player there, and he's now the greatest coach. It's an amazing thing. But I can check my history with Illinois. I went there, I rooted for them when I was younger. But when you get into this business, you just notice people, you just give respect to people who are really good at what they do.
You're exactly right. That's how I feel with Indiana football. Growing up, Indiana was a curse word, you know what I mean? Around all the guys that I knew, you hate Indiana when you grow up in Central Illinois. But then you see Tom Allen, and you see the way he acts with his guys, and the way how much his guys love him. And you see some of the videos in that locker room. It's not fake. It's very real with what they have there, their culture there. And, I can totally see what you're saying with Fitzgerald, because I know if I was a recruit or my kid was a recruit, and Tom Allen's coming into my house and just being honest with us, I'd be like, well, of course you should go there, even though Indiana, 10 years ago, I would have probably hated the idea of even talking to an Indiana fan in middle school.
Yeah. So, all right, Isaac, let's get into, I want to talk some Illinois with you, and I want to talk a little Big Ten with you as well. Things are kind of going well here. Let's start with football. What'd you think of that first Bret Bielema debut, a win over Nebraska? The national story is Nebraska. I get that. But that was just a solid nicely played, executed victory for Illinois.
It was weird as I kind of like went into that game because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I didn't know the team. And which is a weird dynamic because I know all the players, but you don't know the team because you just weren't sure what Bret Bielema was. And, I think the closing of the practice is a big deal. Like we've talked about in the past, Lovie Smith had his warts, but one of the big things that we both really appreciated was he opened the camps up to us because we had a really good idea. We knew that team in 2017 and 2018, they were not going to be very good when we saw every day, like the amount of turnovers that some of these quarterbacks are having in practice. You get to know the team in training camp. We didn't get that part. I didn't get to see those inside stories about that. So I'm going into that game and I wasn't sure what to expect. And I felt like it was a breath of fresh air for watching that Illinois team. Like, I said competent on the story that I wrote about Illinois in that game. And it felt like everything made sense. It's like, okay, you have Isaiah Williams and Luke Ford. So you use them. So you put the ball in their hands because they're like two of the best recruits that Illinois has ever gotten. Oh, so, our system, we don't really love the idea of Isaiah Williams in a pro style offense. So what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to go get Art Sitkowski because that makes a lot of sense backing up Brandon Peters. Hopefully you don't have to use him right away. Well, you did. And it paid off because I don't think Illinois wins that game if they have to go play Isaiah Williams in running that offense. Or, I think we both like Matt Robinson. I just don't know if that's a good fit for what he's trying to do. I think Art makes a ton more sense. And defensively, it just all worked together in such a bigger way. And it just made sense. It's like, okay, we finally see like the ideas that we talk about in the press box for years or in our text threads. It's like the things that we want them to do, they're doing. They're controlling the ball. They're not making mistakes. They're not turning the ball over. They're not making penalties. Like I went back and looked at the numbers 2 years ago when Illinois went to the bowl game. They averaged over 6 penalties a game. 6. Last year, they averaged almost 5 a game with a veteran team. And so this year, obviously it's a 1 game sample size, but I thought the 3 penalties was a much, much, much better to where it was and just looked competent all the way around. And I don't know if Illinois is going to go win 8 or 9 games this year. I don't expect them to win 8 or 9 games this year. I just feel like you have a puncher's chance and the plan makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Like when I think of this, they use the word complementary football a lot. The offense and their play style, right, kind of makes sense to what their defense and their play style is, right? Like it all kind of makes sense coming together. Well, it felt like Rod Smith in this up-tempo offense did it really fit what Lovie was trying to do when you're giving up that many, chunks of yardage consistently. And I don't think offensively, I don't think it's going to be like the sexiest thing we're watching, right? But Iowa never is, Wisconsin never is, Northwestern never is. But you know what they do? They play sound defense. And Illinois had a couple, missed opportunities that Nebraska had because, in coverage they lost some guys on picks and all that, but they were aggressive, man, and they made a college quarterback think a little bit, be panicked a little bit. Like it felt so simple, but like it's just stuff Lovie Smith didn't do. And I think that explains everything about Bret Bielema. Everything has a purpose. Everything is organized. Everything kind of fits together. And I don't know if it'll be 7 wins this year. I don't know if they'll, falter at some point when they play tougher teams, but it just felt different in the way that Illinois looked competent. They didn't look great at times, but it just looked like a solid football team all around.
Well, and I think another big thing is the staff meshes together so much better. And if you saw the plan in place there, but it's so weird because you can kind of go around like and kind of get a pulse for what this fan base feels about Illinois football right now. And the people who love Lovie still have like some fodder, like, oh, Bret Bielema was winning with Lovie players. Lovie brought in Johnny Newton. Lovie brought in Devin Witherspoon. What a great evaluation there and bringing him in and doing a good job there. Lovie has 2 guys in the pros who he recruited who might start day 1, like in Nate Hobbs and Kendrick Green. And those are totally fair points. And then at the other side, you have all of these, maybe Lovie haters who go, look at how much more competent this team looks and look at all of these things. And it's like each side of this puzzle can kind of have their wins that they can say from this game 1.
Which is why, how do you go 2-6 last year? Like, I know the COVID thing happened. I know that, but like, that's what's frustrating. Or how did you lose 3 games in a row to end 2019? Like we overlooked that. They lost 9 of 11 games right there. Like that shouldn't have happened. Like, okay, you lose Minnesota because you didn't have your quarterback. You lose against Purdue because you didn't have your quarterback. but you shouldn't have gotten crushed like you did against Iowa. You shouldn't have been crushed like you did against Northwestern, right? Like you weren't even
about Wisconsin. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have been crushed by Wisconsin in week 1 by a freshman quarterback who looked like a world beater against the defense because he knew it was coming. And, we could have, that quote was out there, like the one about Frost, like, oh, we had to throw half of our game plan out. But don't we remember the other quote from Frost about Lovey's defense where, throughout his career, Scott Frost was very positive about Lovey. I think they have a good relationship, but he said, we know what they're going to run. It's no secret what they're going to run on defense. And the college game, you got to make, these quarterbacks are not pros for a reason. You got to make them think. I think Ryan Walters' defense makes them think, makes them question who's coming, who's dropping, all of those different situations. And we saw a big deal because I do think, though, that there is some talent on this team that Lovey and his staff did a good job of bringing in. There are some talented weapons on it, but I think that they were put in positions to succeed a lot more effectively by Ryan Walters, especially on that defensive side. Like guys like Keith Randolph is playing the right position, like what he needs to be doing. Like I think you see like the impacts of what Devin Witherspoon can do in this scheme. I think you could see Tony Adams be much more comfortable when he doesn't go into the coach's office every week and go, wait, so am I playing nickel, or am I playing boundary, or am I going to safety, or I'm at free safety this week? Oh, I'm going back to corner. Like, and some of those things, like, it's just never made sense in the moment. And now I think these guys are set up for success in a little different way.
Yeah, I don't think this is like a great Big Ten roster. I think we all know that. I think it's got some depth issues at certain positions. And, if you had another quarterback get hurt, if you have an offensive lineman get hurt, if you have another linebacker get hurt, like there's just certain positions that where I still think you feel concerned. But it did feel like there was a lot of meat left on the bone last year. And to be honest with you, I mentioned it before, but like the end of 2019, I felt like there was, games, those last 3 games, like win one of them makes it feel a little bit different. Even after you made a bowl game, just to end with a winning record, how big would that have been? And let's not talk about the beginning of the season where they missed the Eastern Michigan game, was just atrocious for them. So yeah, just about putting these guys in better positions to succeed. So what do you and I both picked them to lose to Nebraska in close games. I was really on the fence throughout because I thought Scott Frost, don't think he's a great coach. I do think it's pretty even talented. Adrian Martinez concerns me. And Ryan Walters had a great game plan for him. And Adrian, had some screw ups in that game. Does it change how you look at the rest of the season, that first win?
Absolutely, because I feel like I was already penciling it in as a loss. So now I feel like your ceiling is just, or your floor has just raised significantly. I don't know why you can't be competitive for the next few weeks. Like the next few weeks are really interesting to me, where you could kind of get some steam here, get some momentum going. And, we can look at this Bret Bielema era and go, there's not been many mistakes made. Well, one of the things I want to see is I want to see him fail once and see how that goes. You know what I mean? And I'm excited by this potential here, because I think you have a game. Like I think this weekend's game against UTSA is no gimme at all. This should be competitive. I think they should be able to win it, but I think this Virginia game too, right? Like that's in 2 weeks. They have a bye week in between?
No, it's next Saturday. And
okay.
I see that one, Isaac. I'm kind of, I think Illinois fans are like, hey, this is our breakthrough in national attention. Well, it was about Nebraska. And I understand why. But if you get to 3-0, I think that's when people start turning their heads and be like, wait, Illinois is 3-0 going into a Friday night game against Maryland. Then you win that. And people are like, oh my gosh, Bret Bielema's got Illinois 4-0 with 3 Power 5 wins already. Like, I think that's when they become a national story.
And then Purdue and Charlotte are following right after that. And we both are down on Purdue, and Charlotte is Charlotte, right? Like are they 5-1?
Like, I predicted 4-2 for the first 6. So even though I had them losing Nebraska, I had them 4-2. Like this is a very favorable schedule. And especially now that you consider you beat Nebraska, who Purdue probably similar talented, probably better high-end talent than Nebraska is, to be honest with you, with David Bell and George Karlaftis, and Milton Wright's really talented. But like Maryland's got Twala, who's pretty talented, but up and down.
They're really young.
Yeah, Maryland's really young. They got talent for sure, but they're really young. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to say like Illinois beats UTSA, they're all of a sudden favored in all these games, but they're all going to be single point spreads outside of Charlotte, who they should be double-digit favorites over.
And it's weird because like you kind of view like you have a coaching advantage in game situations now for the first time in a little bit. And I think Bielema proved that, like just his ability to his play calling, especially to the double dip at the end of the first half to score, and then to start the second half and go down and score, which I thought was really important. It's like what you always want to do in Madden. Like that's the go-to thing. And then to waste the clock and the calling the timeouts at the right times, it just is like competent in-game coaching that we hadn't seen for a little bit. So I mean, you're right. Like I think you have a really good chance to, like, you already see the fan base is like timidly, like they're optimistic. Then you beat Nebraska and you go, okay, we got a really nice little team here, we might think, and we're kind of a little bit in, and like you got a chance to really build on that here. That's why I feel like this UTSA game is no joke, but especially that Virginia game, that feels like a really interesting game for them, where you can kind of change how we might view this Bret Bielema start, and where he can really garner a lot of favor, because there's going to be some really tough games towards the end of the schedule when Wisconsin and Penn State, Iowa, and Northwestern. And I think that Minnesota team is sneaky decent this year too.
Wasn't able to get you before the season. Did you have any like player bold predictions for this Illinois team?
I honestly, like, I thought that Reggie Love was going to be a part of that running back room. I didn't expect him to be that good right away. So that was kind of like one of them. And then he's out and doing it. I'm still a Seth Coleman fan. Like, I still have like this little thought where there's going to be something there with him where he's going to have a breakout game or two. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has I remember that like Isaiah Gay, like freshman year, Isaiah Gay had a couple moments. Like
Coleman already had a sack. He had a sack.
Right. Yeah, I think Coleman's going to have a game or two where he can make a difference. And again, we talk about it again. This scheme makes so much more sense for a guy like him. So much more sense. And he's just set up in a position to succeed and use his speed and use his elite athleticism to be really successful. So I think Reggie Love and Seth Coleman were my two dudes. I think another guy that I keep going back to is the Jafar Armstrong kid from Notre Dame. Like, he's really intriguing to me, but this injury is weird. I haven't really said a lot of information. What do you know anything about this? Like, I didn't even know he was hurt until like it came out. So I guess I should temper my expectations for him till he actually starts practicing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think that's still a weakness, a position of weakness, right? Like I think, I mean, Isaiah Williams, I think both of us thought, yeah, if he wants to play wide receiver, he's gonna be pretty good at. Like, I'm looking at Wan'Dale Robinson's stats over 2 seasons, which was like 20 games. It was like 90 receptions for about 900 yards. I'm like, yeah, that's what Isaiah Williams, I think, can do for them. It is a lot of what Wan'Dale did. And they just haven't had that kind of player. And then I think, Luke Ford, what a great debut. I love the play call to get him the ball right away. Like, and that's why I think Bielema does think of that stuff. Like,
he totally gets it.
What would fire up people? It's a pass to Luke Ford on first down. Yeah. Now, Brandon could have gone anywhere with that ball, but I think Luke was kind of the main target. I didn't see him look away from him the entire time.
I totally with you.
Yeah, but I expect Daniel Barker to get involved more here too. Like, I think those are 3 really good weapons. You're just looking for that outside guy. And with Brian Hightower hurt, I think that's tough, because Donnie Navarro's solid, right? And Casey Washington, I think, is solid. Not going to take the top off of defense, but that's still a position where it's like, okay, can they do it? And let's see Art Sikowski do it a second week in a row, or whenever Brandon comes back. A quarterback's still a question.
No, totally with you. And, the other thing too is I felt like encouraged that they were able to be so successful offensively without Daniel Barker being featured, because I think, was it your bold prediction that he was going to lead this team in receiving? Like, I don't think that's a hot take at all. Like, I think that that's completely fair. And if you're able to win without him, and you're able to do what you did offensively without really featuring him, I'm excited about that, because there's going to be times where Daniel Barker does what he does best, and that's get down the seam, and he has really soft hands, and he's a matchup nightmare. So I feel like this team is just set up for success on both sides. I still have some questions about Tony Peterson's offense and how explosive it could be. Like, I'm not convinced that Art Sitkowski is absolutely going to be like a massive game changer, but they don't need him to be one. And that's a big difference.
It didn't take much. And I think it says a lot about Illinois quarterback play over the years for fans to say Art's the guy. He's definitely the guy. Like, I'm intrigued. And when they got him, Isaac, I know I talked with you about it. Like, I watched the film from Rutgers the last 2 years, and I said, there's some things there. Like, he's not freshman year guy that got thrown to the wolves and had no chance of succeeding. Like, there's some good things that he can do if you're expecting, Wisconsin style quarterback. Like, you're not expecting the guy to put to be an NFL guy who can kind of put you on his back. Like, he can make solid decisions and he can throw the ball. But it's, can this offense unlock it, and can he be consistent? So I think he can be solid. I think he's your multi-year starter potentially, but obviously Brandon had a lockdown on this job forever. So if he's healthy at some point, I don't know. I'm just not in that conversation of, does Art start over Brandon, until I see another really good performance.
No, yeah, 100%. And I don't, shoulders are funky, especially it's not his non-throwing shoulder. So I guess that makes a little bit of a difference. But I put Brandon off until October. Like that's just in my head. Like I'm like, he's probably going to need a whole month of September to get right. Maybe that Charlotte game against on October 2nd might be a time if there's still a situation where Art hasn't really taken a stranglehold of the job where he can get right again before Wisconsin.
Bielema didn't rule him out this week, which I think he did, but he's like, I'm not ruling him out this week, but yeah, I mean, maybe in a couple of weeks he'll be back. But I mean, I think the overall point here is it's nice to have two guys that you feel like you can go in and compete with.
100%. And you feel like you don't have a huge disadvantage with quarterbacks. I think you can do the quarterback tiers in the Big Ten, and Brandon and Art are not top 7 guys, I don't think, but just their floor is so high. You don't need them to be you don't need him to do what Adrian Martinez has to do for Nebraska to win. You know what I mean? Like that, you just don't need that right now. And I just like the utilization of the running backs. This is going to be a running team, and you're going to have chances to make plays down the field. And Art proved he can do it. Brandon, we've seen it happen in the past with him before, and we just have to see if they can really do it and stay consistent, whoever's under center, honestly.
So last year, Illinois had the worst defense in the Big Ten. How much better can they be this year, just with scheme change and a year of age?
Top 8? Is that unrealistic?
If they're top 8, they might win 7 or 8 games.
In the Big Ten, I'm saying top 8 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. I think they could win 7 games in the Big. If you're top 8 defense in the Big Ten, I think Illinois is finishing 4th in the Big Ten West at worst, which is no doubt full team.
Maybe that's a little bit too high. Maybe that 9 to 10 range might be a little bit better. I think top 75 in the country. That would be really impressive. And the moment, I think it was Jay Lehman that said it. He was like, God, I hope that Ryan Walters could stay around for a little bit, because he really liked that first thing. And I was like, oh, that's a little fast, to jump to that conclusion that he's this rising star.
Rod Smith was that 2 years ago, right?
Right. Well, and we also had times I left that Nebraska game going God, Nebraska was a couple plays away from really making this Illinois making the narrative around this Illinois defense much different, much different. So I would like to see what they do against better quarterback play. But I just feel, again, I said earlier, I just think they're set up for success. And this defensive line really intrigues me, Rod Perry is a dude. Keith Randolph is a dude, which we knew that when they recruited him. That was a big recruiting win, and now he's showing it off. Johnny Newton, another big recruiting win, and now he's in a position to succeed. And then you have depth Jamal Woods and Calvin Avery. You've kind of wanted a lot from them, or had to have a lot from them in the last few years, especially in preseason. And those guys are your 4th and 5th or defensive linemen that you're bringing in. So then you add Gay and Carney, that addition to bring Carney back and get him out of the transfer portal is a sneaky big move for this defense. So, and I think there is going to be a big drop off next year, just because I feel like this roster is going to look so different next year. And I'm not sure how sustainable it is, but in the here and now, you're old. You're old at a lot of key positions. You have a lot of guys with a lot of snaps, and now you have a defensive coordinator that's not doing the same thing every single time.
Yeah, and that's why I've said hey, Bielema needs to take advantage of this, because if he does, you could have that Jeff Brom surprise first year of success, and Brom did, capitalize on recruiting. I know Brom's got to continue that. They've fallen off a little bit, but recruiting wise, I know they haven't landed a bunch of 4-stars here, but again, we talk about competence and what they're doing in state. I can't tell you, just talking with prospects, talking with coaches and parents, how much they love it and how much it matters. The reason we talk about in-state so much is because you get a couple in-state kids, you're more likely to get the next ones, right? That's why. It's because it builds on each other. Yes, the kid in a vacuum in Florida or Texas is probably better the 3-star in Texas and Florida than it is in Illinois for the most part, but you have more likely chance to get the kid who's close to home. And
that first class that Levy got was headlined by Illinois kids. That was a reason why that group is pretty successful. You still have those pieces, especially on that offensive line. And just to go away from it was really just was a head scratcher. Just didn't make a lot of sense.
It was probably one of the most surprising moments. and I'm not saying like this changed everything, but it did change things. Like when Josh Sternquist got fired, I was like, wait, what? It's like the best recruiting class Illinois has had, outside of Beckman's Meganson, Dre Brown year.
Mm-hmm.
Like the best recruiting class they've had in a long time. And you fired the guy who kind of spearheaded it. Didn't make much sense to me. It portended for, they had some big recruiting wins with Calvin and Marquez and Isaiah and Shaman and all those guys, but it just, I didn't understand it at the time.
Should we have known? Should that have piqued our interest a little bit? Should we like really push that more? That was a problem, and there was just some.
I think we talked about it. I had to look up my stories, but I remember I talked with Sternquist after it, and we had I did a story on like, and he was shocked by it. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it at the time, and I think after they got Virtus and Calvin, you're thinking okay. And they get Marquez and Isaiah, but just like the solid foundation you needed, and you missed on so many in-state kids that have turned into really, really good players elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's really hurt depth. And I think we're going to see it, right? I mean, you mentioned it, like next year, the roster loses a lot. And I think some of those recruiting classes, 18 and 19 specifically, some of the guys you could have had in state would have really helped.
Yeah, one of the guys I think of is Nick Broker. I don't know if you've seen what he's doing at Ole Miss. He is a monster. Like, he is a beast. And, I don't think Illinois did a bad job recruiting him, but I don't know how. I think they could have done better. You know what I mean? And he's gone down to SEC land and gone to Ole Miss. And I think he started right away, was a freshman All-American, and now he's in conversation to be a draft prospect. You put him on that offensive line right now, like you could move Palcho inside. Like he's probably your right tackle. Like it's a pretty good group.
Well, let's bring this up, Isaac, because you and I mean, you were here when those recruiting classes were happening. That staff, when they were recruiting, it felt like solo recruiting, right? It felt like Butkus was the only guy recruiting this person, or, Corey Patterson was the only one recruiting this person. The most success they had was when it was Corey Patterson and Austin Clark going tandem with each other, and Thad Ward for a little bit before Thad went to Temple. Like that group was really successful together. Or when Lovey went all in on a guy like Johnny Newton, right?
Or Seth Coleman.
Yeah, or Seth Coleman. Like they go all, when you saw that whole staff go all in on a guy, feels like the whole staff is doing that for every in-state kid, especially. And that stuff matters, man. Like they want to feel loved all the time. And Bret Bielema is very involved. But every single staff member is involved in most of these recruitments. And that's a huge change.
And that's why I think that just like you can just see my first impression of this Illinois staff was, God, it looks like they've done it before, because they all have that background. And, that we expected that transition period to take a little bit of time for Lovey to maybe understand the recruiting game. And I don't think he ever really got it. Like I'm confident saying that. Like, I don't know if he ever truly got it and understood what was going on, and how to
or wanted to change. Like, I think he understood the recruiting game. And then he was like, well, I'm going to do it my way. Right. And then he pivoted towards a transfer portal, said, oh, we can find guys. Hey, there's enough talent out there for everybody. That used to be his thing. It's like, yeah, but there's talent that you'd rather have. Right?
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. You don't, because I think Lovey had a lot of strengths, and I don't want to turn this into a Lovey pod, but there were a lot of strengths. I felt like I genuinely liked him as a person until he called me that one time. But it just felt like there were so many necessary steps that they just skipped, and it felt a little arrogant at times. And I feel like this staff comes in with a lot less arrogance, a lot less like they're coming in going, hey, we need to rebuild these things. Hey, we're trying to be really communicative with some of these teams, like maybe some of these high school teams that you've never even heard of. Like they just check the boxes. They care about some of those things. They care about Illinois high school football, which Illinois high school football isn't great on the national perspective, but you have to do that. You have to do that when you're the coach of an Illinois program.
Yeah, it just feels like the chemistry is there with all this staff. Like, I mean, I know they say they love being around each other. I think they're being honest there, but I think Bielema, he's got a full staff meeting every day, like a couple times a day. Like I think Lovey did that once a week, right? So I think doing that, I think this staff is all kind of pushing in the same direction, which has not always been the case with Illinois, dating back to even the Tim Beckman staff. All right, let's take a quick break, guys. I want to talk about the Big Ten because I haven't really focused on that, but it's finally week one for the rest of the Big Ten. I want to get your thoughts now that you're covering the entire conference, really the entire country, about the rest of the Big Ten. We'll do that next on the Illini Inquirer Podcast. All right, we got some great Big Ten games. I like this. I was kind of skeptical at first, Isaac, but I kind of like how we have Big Ten matchups in week one and some great ones. It's nerve-wracking if you're a fan of one of these teams because you don't get the warm-up. But I do think it adds a little bit of a wild card into college football that sometimes, let's be honest, like the NBA, is a little bit predictable, especially with this run Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma are having right now. It's like there's the haves and everybody else is just competing for a January 1st bowl game. I love these. We got Indiana, Iowa first week, right? That we have some big time Penn State, Wisconsin matchups. Here we go.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. I like just throwing teams into the fire because I feel like we learn a little bit more about them. These games are really important early. Another sneaky game is Ohio State, Minnesota is going to be a really fun game on Thursday. Like I'm excited that that's kind of like a standalone. I know Rutgers is really excited about their program. Like they've sold out that game against the host Temple on Thursday at 5:30 on Big Ten Network. So it is fun. It is going to be really fun. I think Penn State, Wisconsin easily is a headliner, 2 top 20 programs, but I think that Indiana, Iowa game is going to be very, very interesting because everything you hear out of Iowa is that team is ready to take a big step forward. Like they really like what they have going there. Like Tyler Goodson is obviously a really big stud, but the big thing that they are missing is that, that you think of the strength of Iowa is in their line play. They got some holes to fill on both the offensive line and the defensive line. So I'm fascinated by how that transition process happens. And then you look at Indiana. When's the last time that Indiana has had the best quarterback in the Big Ten? Like I name it. Like you can't. Like it hasn't happened in a long time. And Michael Penix Jr. is a absolute stud. And that Indiana team, and we talked a little bit earlier with that Tom Allen culture, they're legit. And if they go into Iowa and win that game, that's gonna be fun. That's gonna be really fun.
All right. If you had same odds to win the Big Ten quarterback of the year, would you put your money on Penix or CJ Stroud?
Stroud. Yeah,
no,
right. I'm gonna pick Stroud.
Why. Like Penix was, I think, my number one pick for Big Ten preseason player of the year. No, I might have put Chris Allen. But I was like, I should just put the Ohio State quarterback because they're going to be unbelievable. I don't even know if we need to talk about them because they are just on another level, Isaac. Like, who do you think anybody can threaten them? Like, and if so, who?
No, I'm sorry. Like, I don't think. I think the gap between them. Like, I was talking to somebody, and I think we saw it on College Game Day, where I think it was Chris Felica, the Bear, was saying how he felt like the gap between Ohio State and the number 2 team in the Big Ten is like even bigger than the gap between Clemson and the second best team in the ACC. And I completely agree with him because you just look at this Penn State team and maybe that's a team that you could circle as maybe the second best team or Wisconsin. And I just still have major questions about Penn State. Like they have a new offensive coordinator in Mike Yurcich. Like, can you finally get the most out of Sean Clifford? Like, is Sean Clifford a product of all the talent around him and he's kind of weighing him down a little bit? Or is he really talented, just had a little bit of an off year and the inconsistencies last year are gone? So there's just a lot of these questions about some of these teams. Meanwhile, Ohio State, like you go through their entire starting lineup, 4-star, 5-star, 4-star, 4-star. Their offensive line, like I did a thing, like I think they had 7 of their starters on offense were all like top 40 commits at their position, like or in the country. I mean, not at their position, just in the country. And their worst ranked recruit is Chris Olave, the freaking Big Ten best wide receiver, who's a wide receiver 1. Like it is just a different level, man. Like they are something.
We just had the team talent composite, a 24/7 update, and this stat is unbelievable. Ohio State leads the Big Ten with 66 former 4 or 5-star prospects. Number 2 is Michigan at 45. So 21 more than the next team. Penn State at 44. The number 1 team in the Big Ten West, you know who it is?
Minnesota.
Nebraska.
Interesting. I love that.
23 4 or 5-star prospects.
Wow.
Nebraska. And I think Wisconsin's next at 18.
Wow.
In the Big Ten West.
But that's what I'm saying. Like this is an uneven playing field and you just got to admit, like, you just got to embrace it at this point. Like, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen like some of the recruiting class that Ohio State just brought in, like these freshmen that they have 2 of the top 5 defensive linemen in the country. So they have holes on their defensive line, holes, quote unquote, that they're filling with 2 top 5 commits in the entire country who are coming in. They have a running back that they think is already better than J.K. Dobbins coming in as a freshman. Their wide receiver room is already stacked with Chris Olave. And then they go get Marvin Harrison Jr. adding to that mix, another top 50 wide receiver. Like they have 2 top 50 guys. Like there's a reason why Mookie Cooper bounced in a hurry, because they recruit in a hurry in that wide receiver room. I think Brian Hartline, you could probably put up there as maybe the best assistant in the country, maybe like hands down the Big Ten, but maybe in the country, he's up there. So just like, you don't want to like spoil it, but Ohio State's going to be in there. Could somebody beat them? Yeah, because it's college football and things can happen.
Can they just probably
what?
not. Probably yeah. They was I don't see it. And yeah, man, like what they recruit is just absolutely ridiculous. And let's talk. I mean, Ryan Day, he's the best coach in the Big Ten. I know he took over the best possible thing, but he has not only kept Ohio State up there, like you could argue he's recruiting even better than Urban Meyer was. So a fantastic job by him. Like I know it's a great situation, but that's tough to follow a Hall of Fame coach like Urban Meyer and to do it just as well.
Well, and then the in-games part of it for Day is he's an unbelievable play caller too. Like he might be the best play caller in the Big Ten too. So like that matters as well. Like he is such a huge advantage. They crush that hire. And, I don't expect Ohio State to take a dip. Like, can they win a national title this year? Maybe. I still have some questions. Like we need to see it a little bit more. Like the quarterback thing is an issue. Like you got to just see it before you really just anoint them in that conversation. And, but I have no doubt in my mind that they'll be in the college football playoff. Like it would take something extremely drastic for them not to make the college football playoff and be in that competition for it.
All right. So who you selling stock in the Big Ten? Like it could be like, hey, Indiana, I don't think it's going to be that good, or I'm not buying Wisconsin, the Big Ten West, right? Like who are you selling right now?
I don't understand the hype around Minnesota. Like, I don't understand that. Like, Ryan Burns does a great job covering that site, but he had them at like 9-3. And, there's been other people that have talked about them potentially winning the Big Ten West. I guess I have a ton of questions about that defense. Like that defense was one of the worst units in all of football last year too. And it's like, are we just for sure they're going to come back and be good? Like, and me and Trevor released
quite as good.
What?
Tanner Morgan wasn't quite as good last year.
Well, I wonder why. Maybe when you don't have Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson outside, like there's a little bit of a difference. Like it just is. And they have another big injury to a wide receiver. Chris Ottman-Bell is a really good player who might not be ready to go for the opener here. And so like I like Mo Ibrahim, like their running back, he's a stud, and like their offensive line is a good unit, like a very solid experienced unit. And, it pays off to have a quarterback that doesn't usually kill you. And Tanner Morgan doesn't really kill you. But again, like Tanner Morgan was a product of the absolute superstar weapons that he had around him. And, that's not a bad thing. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But like we shouldn't be surprised that he takes a little bit of a step back when you lose. Tyler Johnson decides to go play for the Bucs and is making big catches in the Super Bowl. And Rashad Bateman's a second-round pick for the Ravens. Like that, we shouldn't be surprised that they take a step back. So I just have a lot of questions about that defense. Like they'll run the ball, they'll be fine offensively, I think. And I just don't think that defense is going to really make them competent. I trust Iowa's system and I trust Wisconsin a little bit more. So they're probably the biggest one I'm selling.
I always felt like Tyler Johnson was the most underdrafted guy I've seen in the Big Ten. Like I watched him for years. I'm like, that guy's a third rounder, like at worst. I know he might not run the fastest, but just goes up and gets the ball. So I think, was it 5th or 6th that he
fifth round?
Mm-hmm. I was like, man, what a steal. So Tom Brady gets to throw to him.
Yeah.
Is there anybody you're buying more than the others?
Am I wrong to like Michigan? Like,
all right, I'm going to do my take. Why is Jim Harbaugh on the hot seat? Like, why is he on the hot seat? Okay. I wrote this today in our digest. The guy in 6 seasons is 34-16 in the Big Ten. Okay. And he has 4 top 20 finishes in the AP poll. His two predecessors in 7 years were 24-32 in the Big Ten, 1 top 20 finish in the AP poll. Like who do they think they are? They're not Ohio State. And I think Trevor texted us yesterday. Harbaugh averages more wins per season than any Michigan coach. Now you have to do, there's 12 games now, but still, like, he's been pretty successful there. He's just not Ohio State. It's been more Wisconsin or Iowa than Ohio State. And I don't know, like, that's not a terrible place to be. I know you want to do better, but you fire Jim Harbaugh. I don't know if you're getting better.
I saw this, one of those, you ever see those motivational quotes or something? And it's like, one of the biggest things of anger is unmet or unrealized expectations. And that's all it is there in Michigan. Like, you can win a lot, but just, they have these expectations are here. And Harbaugh just isn't meeting those really lofty expectations that they've set for him, even though he's done a great job. And, I just look at their recruiting and, like, you want to go toe for toe with Ohio State. They're the only team that's even in the conversation going toe to toe with them from a recruiting perspective. And I think they have major question. Like, I'm not sold on their starting quarterback. Cade McNamara is his name, who took the job. He's solid, he's serviceable, but
Which
it's
is
just
weird.
he's just
Which is weird because the one thing you thought Jim Harbaugh would be good at is quarterback, and that's been an issue the last couple of years. Like, Shea Patterson was pretty good for them, and I think they'd love to have a guy like that back, and maybe J.J. McCarthy later this year or next year is that guy.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, McNamara is just a placeholder for McCarthy to come in and do his thing. And I think AJ Henning could be a big part of their team this year too. And that's another guy that Illinois fans know a lot about. And, there's some funny recruiting stories that we can tell about that one at a different time, but he's going to be a big part of that. And they might not have like that big play, big dude on the outside like Michigan's had in previous years, who's like ends up being a 4th, 5th, 6th round draft pick. But I think they'll be good enough. And I think that defense has to take a step forward because it was so atrocious last year. I have a hard time feeling like that Michigan team's really going to be that bad. But the Big Ten East is tough because I think Penn State's going to be much improved. I think Indiana's going to be much improved, and somebody's got to lose these games. So it feels like it's going to be a dogfight, especially in the Big Ten East for second place.
I don't want to tease everybody with that Henning a little bit. I mean, that was the month Illinois was going to land everybody, right? In the 2020 class, you had Jaden Thompson, who's the offensive lineman from Simeon that they had. Man, I can't remember his name now. Really good prospect, went to Oregon. Committed to Illinois, flipped to Oregon. Reggie Love was on board. Like, at the time, Illinois fellow was getting AJ Henning, Mookie Cooper,
James Frenchie,
Jalen St. John, James Frenchie, all of it. And it was going to be the breakthrough for Lovie Smith. It of course did not happen.
Shocking to absolutely nobody. That was like, it felt like the Lovie Smith experience. You have all these eggs in these baskets, and then the eggs just keep dropping out over and over again, and it just doesn't work out, and you get like 2 of them. It was weird. It was weird. But yeah, I do think AJ Henning's going to be a really nice piece for him this year. And again, like, the thing with Harbaugh too is that, like, he has found a whole new staff. He completely revamped his staff, and I think that's one of the most underrated things in college football. If you get your staff right, you got a chance. And I think this staff might be something different, and maybe something he absolutely needed and can save his job. And that Michigan team they recruit too good to be as bad as they were last year.
Yeah. Is Northwestern going to be any good? Like, are they going to be good?
I'm out on them. I'm out till I see it. You see some of these power rankings.
You know what that means though? Every time we're out on Northwestern, they have like their best year.
That is kind of fair, but we should have seen last year coming with the amount of returning talent that they had. Like 2 years ago, this feels a little bit like 2 years ago, like the 2019 team that beat Illinois. I don't know how they won that game against Illinois. They should not have won that game, but that team was 3-9, and I'm getting some 2019, but yeah, that 2019 vibes on that team. Like, Hunter Johnson's taking over as quarterback, and maybe that's an Art Sitkowski type of thing. We should learn from Art Sitkowski, where maybe your first impression of a guy is wrong. Like, maybe after 2 years, guys can just get better and improve. Funny how college football works like that. So really, he's a really talented piece. Hopefully he's gotten a little bit better after a couple of years after a dreadful debut there in Northwestern. But I don't know. I don't love that defense. They have to replace a ton on that side of the ball. And we give Fitz so much credit, and you can, and that's totally fine to do that. And I think they have a high floor, but you have a lot of dudes that you're going to replace. And eventually you got to find some talent that you can recruit at a high level. Like, Speets Skoronski's an absolute stud on the offensive line for them. I think he plays left tackle already as a sophomore, but you're going to have to replace those guys. Like, they've had multiple year starters at linebacker and in the secondary that they have to replace. And that's easier said than done.
Yeah, I'm not too high on them. Like, I think I picked them 4th, I think, in the Big Ten West this year. I think I had Minnesota above them, which I didn't feel great about, but I just thought Minnesota's got more proven wide quarterback, running back, offensive line, even though Skoronski's as good of a tackle as there is in the country. In the secondary, I mean, they got Joseph back there, but Newsom being gone is a major loss. It's okay if I buy Penn State as the team that I think can take a huge leap. I know 0-5 to start last year was weird, but then they end with 4 straight wins. And if there's one team that can match up skill player wise, potentially with Ohio State, maybe not play caller, but skill player wise, they have at the top end of its roster a really talented group. And I think James Franklin's a pretty good coach. Like, I think it's that time where, what's he, 7 years into that job now? He's done a really, really good job. And they're starting to take that, hey, we can recruit with Ohio State. The way they're recruiting, maybe not as many 5-stars, but they're loading up there. So I'm really interested to see Penn State against Wisconsin, because I think we know what Wisconsin is. And I have the most respect for Paul Chryst staff, especially Jim Leonard. Like, I think that defense is going to be elite yet again. It's just, what do they have offensively? But it's kind of a contrast of styles there. I can't wait to see that game.
They're going to be tested right away. That Wisconsin defense is going to be tested because, again, that Wisconsin defense does have a few new faces that they're breaking in that secondary. But that Penn State, like, if you want to talk about wide receiver rooms, obviously Ohio State's in a class of its own. They have the number 1 wide receiver room in the country, not let alone the Big Ten. The number 2 in the Big Ten is probably Penn State. Like, they have, and Illinois saw it last year, their team speed is really, really, like, they put multiple dudes out there that run like 4.4s, like at wide receiver. And that's something Illinois could really use. And that's the gap. That's the gap. And I do think that Penn State team is one to rise. Again, I just keep going back to Clifford. There were just way too many times it was inconsistency last year, but you got a quarterback whisperer in Mike Yurkich, the new offensive coordinator there, who's done great jobs. He was at Ohio State. I think he was at Texas too. Like, he's done a great job throughout his career. He's supposed to be the guy that's supposed to do it. And we hear that a lot throughout the preseason. We'll have to see it, but on paper, they have all the talent. And then, I mean, their running back room is just stacked too. So James Franklin does a really, really, really good job. Like, if I was doing which coach I would rather have, like, he's probably second in the Big Ten behind Day for me, like pretty safely second in that conversation.
Especially if you're saying, like, who do you think can win a title? Like, yeah, with Fitz, you're not winning a title. Ferentz, you're not winning a title. Chris, you're not probably winning a title. Yeah, it's probably Franklin and then Harbaugh. I don't know. You got to get.
How about Scott Frost? Is he there for you? And not there.
I wanted to ask you about that here in a second, but who are you taking in the West? Wisconsin, Iowa?
Yeah, I have Wisconsin for now. I put Wisconsin there 1, and then I put Iowa 2. I think Minnesota could be in that mix for 3, or Northwestern. It's just going to be weird, kind of seeing that middle of the pack. And I think the product that you saw on the field from Illinois could potentially have them be in that conversation with Northwestern. Like, you should compete with Northwestern. Like, the days of just getting trampled by them or them imposing their will on you constantly over and over, doing everything they ever want against you, those days should be over. Like, so you should compete in that game against them. But I still I like that Wisconsin team. I think Mertz is set up for big success. Like, they have their 2 wide receivers back who got hurt last year. Sorry, my ice maker just made some noise. Okay. And then those 2 wide receivers are huge, and the running back room is really good. They got a Clemson transfer that won the job there, and then a freshman who was really good last year, Jalen Berger, who's going to be their number 2. And that offensive line is good. That defense we already know is going to be good. I just have less questions about them than Iowa, and that's kind of why I'm putting Wisconsin there. And I think explosiveness for Wisconsin could be on the way. Like, I really do. Like, we might, like, I would not be shocked at all if they put up some pretty interesting numbers offensively this year in year 2 of Graham Mertz.
That's the thing about playing in the West when you're Illinois, is that there's opportunity, man. Like, Purdue's not good. Nebraska's not good. Minnesota, like, obviously is way better. Like, they got a higher ceiling with PJ Fleck, but they weren't great last year, right? They got some flaws. And even Northwestern, I think this is a year where you could get them. Like, it came down to my season predictions of that game, of course, is the bowl game playing. Yeah. And it's just like, I have the pick, like, Fitz has won 6 in a row, and most of them aren't close. So I'm just like, I've got to give the edge until I see it. Now, after seeing against Nebraska, I might be like, I might have picked them to win that game now if I look back on it. But it's always week 12, and that's where injuries always play a role, and depth is still an uncertainty for Illinois.
That's the thing. Like, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer about this Illinois team, but I'm really worried about the depth in certain spots. Like, on paper, it looks okay right now when everybody's healthy. And that's where maybe a little bit of my fear is. But I do agree in this West. Like, I think Illinois' roster is better than Purdue, top to bottom. No question about it in my mind. Like, Illinois with Iowa should be comparable. Like, you've played them decently well over the past few years. Like, it's time. Like, it's time to be competitive with that team. Like, I don't think that roster is like leaps and bounds better than what Illinois put out on the field against Nebraska right now. Now, will that be the same when they play later this year? We'll have to find out.
Over under new Big Ten football coaches Notice I didn't say firing. I said new Big Ten football coaches in 2022. 1.5.
Over. I would take the under on 2.5, but I'll take the over on 1.5, just because I do think that, I mean, we talked about it. I think Scott Frost is in trouble. I think everybody around that program knows it. and
20 million buyout. I mean, it's not my money, so I don't care, but it's just like, ouch.
Yeah, no, totally. And then like, I do think that there is like, you could, like, what's stopping like James Franklin from getting poached? Like, what's stopping some of those things from happening? And then I think you also have to look at Michigan. Like, that, you know, their expectations are so high. If they get trounced by Ohio State again, like, I mean, Jim Harbaugh's head's going to be on a picket fence. You know what I mean? Like they want that. Like they're going to be out for blood, like in that situation. So I'll take the over on that one. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan, like I said earlier, has a resurgent year and he stays, and maybe Scott Frost gets it together a little bit. Because again, like I watched that game against Illinois, and there were moments where it looks really bad. But then I just wonder if he could get a quarterback, because Adrian Martinez just has so many times where he just kills you with his decision making. But then Scott Frost opens his mouth and makes these dumb comments in post-game press conferences or Monday press conferences that maybe give you a little bit too much insight into how unprepared they were.
I'm not going to complain about it. It's just like,
oh, I'm not either. But I mean, you know what I mean? Like he just is he's showing you, like, and not hiding it, that they were not prepared and ready to go. And that's not good.
You just had to listen to the Illini Inquirer podcast to say that, hey, I think they're going to run a 4-2-5. Like apparently that was a huge thought that no one else was. It was like, I don't know. Ryan Walters was hinting at it the entire offseason. One name I wanted to bring up. I don't think he's going anywhere, and I don't think he should go anywhere, because I think he's really good for the program. He's elevated them. But if Jeff Brom at like 2-7 in the Big Ten, or 4-8 overall or something like that, I think he's making so much money. They're invested in him. And again, the program is way better with Jeff Brom. But like after like 3 disappointing years in a row, it's kind of like, oh, maybe this isn't what we thought it was going to be under him. Like we're not going to be, you know, what Minnesota maybe has turned into. Maybe we're just like fighting for a bowl game every year.
Yeah, that is definitely an intriguing game for sure. And, you know, I think Jeff Brom, like maybe he's just an offensive coordinator. Like that conversation has to be had. Maybe he just that's where he's best at, and we're just not really sure about that yet. But you know, we talk, like I don't think there's more drastic switch between that high end of talent on a roster and then the gaping gap between the rest of it. Like I don't know if they even have a dude behind like the top 3 guys, like we've talked about, like the Milton Wright, like the David Bell, and then obviously George Karlaftis is a defensive end. But and then I kind of like their quarterbacks, like they're okay, they're fine, like they're fine. But after that, like, can we name one guy like who would be an all Big Ten, like even like in the mix for all Big Ten? Like it's rough. Like it's rough out there behind that top end talent. And, you know, I wouldn't say I trust Purdue to make the right decision regarding that situation, because they don't get football hires right. Maybe it's hard to win at Purdue, and they got a little taste of it with Brom, but there's just something about that. Like if you haven't used the portal, like to really just build up just the depth that you have there, and it's really that bad behind you, it frustrates me if I was a Purdue fan, or maybe in that for Purdue, like athletic director or like athletic offices.
Yeah, to me, it's like Purdue, like usually you said wide receiver, they've been good. Karlaftis is an absolute stud. But then I look at like the back 7 for them has been an issue. The O-line has never been good there. The running backs, like Horvath was a pain for Illinois, but I don't think he was a big pain for anybody else. Like it's just like, do they have enough pieces everywhere? And of course, Illinois had that problem. I think they could, right, you said, if they have injuries. But it's just like, yeah, there's some top end talent there. And of course, Rondale not being healthy really hurt them.
They also had that tight end that was really good, who won the Mackey Award. Why am I blanking on his name? Yeah, Bryce Hopkins. Yeah, like they've had really high end guys. Like the defensive line has not been great either. Like they just haven't been there. They just haven't had it. And I don't really know how to decipher that, because, you know, you look at what Jeff Brom is and you would think that he would be able to be really good on the recruiting trail. It's just how personable he is, with how engaging is, how his stylistic offense, like his best case stylistic offense, seems like it would be a really good fit there. And he hasn't been able to get it done on a big time stage. The
only other program I look at is like, when does Kirk Ferentz retire? But I don't think it's going to be next year.
Mm-hmm. No. And I guess Loxley we could throw him in that conversation, like if something happens, but I don't know. I feel like he's recruited really well there. I feel like the amount of talent like you understood the type of job he was taking over after the DJ Durkin like saga. That was awful. So I don't expect that. And Shiano's obviously not going anywhere. They love him there. Like, I guess maybe Shiano gets poached, maybe, but I just don't see it.
I think they're both really happy with each other, and I think that's going to be his last gig. Yeah, I go under. I think the Frost thing probably happens because it feels like it's written, but maybe they win 6-7 games and they don't do it and they wait.
That schedule sucks for them.
I don't see it happening.
Do you know what my favorite stat is? Scott Frost won 13 games in his last year at UCF, and he's won 12 in 3 years and counting at Nebraska. That kind of sums it up.
How much longer will we be able to say that stat? Like, is equal to? Is it 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Because they're going to be 4, right? Like,
yeah. Let me pull up their schedule really quick. I want to see.
Can they get Oklahoma?
All right. If I gave you Nebraska plus 30, would you take that?
To Oklahoma? Oh,
yeah.
That's a big number. That's a really big number. But it is Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma. I mean, but yeah, they'll probably beat Buffalo too, right? Yeah. They'll only last for 2 more weeks, but
we'll enjoy it for the next 14 days. We will enjoy the heck out of it.
I think Scott Frost should be 3-2. Like Michigan State, a lot of people picking as the last place team. If you was the Michigan State, I don't think he's coming back. Like I don't know if there's any coming back from a 2-3 start in year 4.
Okay, so all right, let's pencil that in. Let's do some math here. So you beat Michigan State in week 5. That means you're 3-2 after losing to Oklahoma. Then you have Nebraska or Northwestern at home. You should win that game. Right? You're at home. You're Nebraska against a Northwestern team. You should win that game. But are you penciling it in for sure? Probably not. So you would have them losing that.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. 3-3. Michigan. You're not winning that game. 3-4. So. Minnesota on the road.
I'll take Minnesota.
3-5. Purdue at home.
I'll take them at home against Purdue.
Okay. Ohio State, no chance. Wisconsin, no chance. Iowa, no chance. That's 4-8.
And maybe we give them Northwestern's 5-7. But yeah, you're not bringing them back then, right? Like
no, you can't. Like that
4
would
years
be
without a bowl. That doesn't happen at Nebraska.
So you're 12-20 entering this year. So that means you would be 16-28.
That's why it's so crazy they lost that game. That's why it mattered so much that they lost that game. So they looked at that schedule and said, guys, we don't have many opportunities for 6. Like we just, I mean, with Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Iowa on the schedule, we just don't have many opportunities to get there. And they got 2 givens, I would imagine, with their non-conference, but like there's not many others on there. So man, yeah, like it could get ugly. And usually it doesn't get ugly. They're usually nice in Nebraska, but I get why they're so frustrated with this coach, because it feels like they just have a coach who has a coaching disadvantage every time they're out there.
But it's weird because you read some of the Nebraska writers and they go, no, they're definitely not getting rid of him. No, they're definitely not getting rid of him. And I wonder how much that conversation changes in the next couple months. Like, is like that Ohio State game is going to be ugly. That's going to be really ugly. I have a feeling that Wisconsin game could get really out of hand on the road. And then Iowa's really good.
If they make a bowl, they won't fire him. If they make a bowl, they won't fire him. So that's a low bar, but after losing to Illinois, it's a hard bar to get over at this point. So, I mean, $20 million is a lot of money. I don't think Trev Alberts wants to do it, but man, if you fire him, you better have a good one coming in. And that's what would be the interesting conversation. Are they good enough to go steal a Matt Campbell from Iowa State now that the Big 12 is dissipating? Like, is Chris Kleeman, could they steal him from Kansas State, or do they go, get somebody else? I think that's the kind of guy you need. I think the days of thinking Nebraska is a blue blood that's going to out-recruit everybody to Lincoln, it's probably not going to happen. I think you need a program builder. You need to model yourself after what Wisconsin and Iowa and what Illinois are trying to do.
And it's weird. Again, it goes back to those expectations. Just the lofty expectations that you have in Michigan are some of the same that they have in Nebraska, and it's just not meeting there. But the weird thing is that this year they were fine with the bowl game. They'd have been fine with it. Yep. And he can't even get up to that part.
Yeah. All right, man. Anything else you want to hit on? Big Ten, Illinois, otherwise?
Buy your stock in Seth Coleman. I'm scared about this Illinois secondary. Joey Wagner's hair looks extremely good these days. Yeah. Derek Piper, extremely good at picking football games. And I miss Lante. That's it.
It's a good way of wrapping things up, man. We miss you around here, but it's nice to have you back. We'll have to do this every once in a while, catch up every couple of weeks or every month or so, man.
Sounds good, man. Anytime.